Hi everyone, my name is Tanya, and this video is actually my testimony for Jesus Christ. If anyone has been a friend of mine or watched any of my previous videos, you'll notice that I actually took them all down, and that's because a lot of the stuff that I was talking about has been revealed to me to be false. And so basically, I made a testimony video already. It's seriously long. And so for people that don't mind watching in-depth, accounts of people when they have the time, that's fine. But I figured I would go ahead and make a shorter version for the many of us who don't always have time to watch hour-long rantings of people like myself who talks a lot. So basically, I'm going to try to make a very long story short and just focus on the important things. So basically, to start off, since we're talking about God here, I do think this is a little bit important as far as the background goes. I was raised Catholic, and I went to Sunday school. I did all the whole First Communion, the confirmation, all that stuff as part of that. And, excuse me, pardon me. And, so I knew about Jesus. I had learned the Catholic viewpoint about God, and but the thing is that when I was younger and I was learning of all those things, um, I had this really just kind of negative, fearful view of God, and it didn't really speak to my heart when I went to Catholic church. I always felt kind of creeped out and um, just not inspired, not spiritual. I felt just creepy all over. And so I believed in God, but I was mostly fearful and had a, very negative view of a vengeful God that would, punish people who didn't follow what he said. And I didn't understand how God could be like that or why God would be like that. I had questions. I was always very eager to figure things out as a child. So I was a seeker. And so in my early 20s, I had an experience. I guess you could say it was a supernatural experience that I thought was my guardian angel at the time. But at this point, I'm not really sure what to make of it because I was in a very negative environment. And so it could have attracted a lot of different things. But anyway, I was basically opened up to this alternative spirituality and viewpoint, and someone had spoken to me about, you don't have to be afraid of God, and this is all just a learning period, and each lifetime, you learn new lessons and stuff like that. And my mind was blown because I had never heard anything like that, and it was very comforting to me because I was like, oh, I don't have to be afraid of God. Um, God isn't angry, and I don't have to live a certain way. It's all just to learn a lesson. And so I started studying like Eastern philosophy. Um, and I got really heavy into that. I was, reading about Hinduism and reincarnation and Buddhism and, you know, meditating to detach and reduce suffering and, attain nirvana and enlightenment and all that. So I was very big into that. I started believing in reincarnation and karma. Um, what you do comes back to you, that sort of thing. Um, and, as I set foot on that path, different doors kept being opened up to me. So I started meditating more. I started doing yoga. I started reading more about different types of energy healing, chakra healing, Reiki, all that alternative stuff that's becoming very popular nowadays. I started frequenting, excuse me, psychics. Um, and the thing about this type of spiritual experience is that it's very real. You can go to a psychic and have them tell you everything about your life and be very accurate. Say, oh, your mother's sick, and your mother happens to be going into surgery. You're like, oh, how did you know that? So you start thinking, well, oh, this is true. This is the truth, you know? And like I said, I had always been a truth seeker, so I always wanted to know basically what was truth. So when things started coming true and happening, it kept reinforcing in my mind that this was the true way to know God. And um, so I kept going down that path. And let's see, I got really big into meditation, like I said. I, at one point, was so into it that excuse me, I actually, and I didn't know this could happen at that point. I didn't know this was possible, but I actually meditated right out of my body. And, I was like floating around, looking down at my body. Um, Turn my ringer. Sorry. Um, and when that happened, I actually was not expecting it. Of course, I'm sitting there doing my, and trying to clear my mind and all that. And at the time, it was very helpful to me, meditating, because I had dealt with a lot of anger issues, a lot of addictions, a lot of stuff like that growing up. So it was calming to me and it felt very reassuring. Um, but yeah, I had never knew that you could have outer body experiences or astral project or time travel, all these things, remote viewing, all this stuff. I didn't know about that at the time. So um, when that happened, I was like, at first I was like, oh my God, like it scared me because I didn't expect to be removed from my body. Um, but what it did was it really showed me, okay, we are definitely a spiritual being. I'm more than this body because I just lifted out of it. And so a lot of times I say to people like that have questions or say things to me, that may be agnostic or atheist or something like that, and they think we just randomly appeared here, and that's it. I had my doubts at certain points in my life where I questioned it too, and no, it's just not the case. We are spiritual beings, and we are part of a spiritual warfare. And I know that sounds like crazy talk, to a lot of people, and but truth is stranger than fiction. Um, so yeah, and so basically, I got heavier into that stuff. I ended up getting like a tattoo of an ohm on my foot. I was big into like the crystals. I was doing moon ceremonies every full moon, every new moon, always setting my intentions. I was, burning dollar bills to release, spells put on me by the Illuminati and all this stuff. Um, which, I'm not saying the Illuminati is not real, but this is basically witchcraft, what I was doing, and I didn't understand that at the time. So, because I really felt like the energy and the forces of the world, like we could harness them and use them. It's kind of like this, you don't realize how much this idea is perpetuated in society, but it really is, even in movies like Star Wars and stuff like that. So yeah, so actually, speaking of Star Wars, TV in general, movies, Hollywood, music, all that stuff, that played a big part in me kind of going off track too, because I got heavy into the band 311, which, I'm not here to degrade them because I literally idolized them for much of my life. I loved their lyrics because they were all about like keep a positive vibe, they make it tough for you and all that. And I had dealt with so much negativity and anger and addiction, like I said, and abuse, that, it was comforting to me. It was like, yeah, just keep positive. And so I really loved them. And uh, anyway, I got heavy into authors like Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, you can heal your life kind of philosophy, You're your own God, basically. That human beings are basically good. We just have to, you know, basically let go of our limitations and our judgments about ourselves, and we can also become like gods and become like Buddha and Jesus and all that. And they see they see all the ascended masters like Krishna, um, etc., as all being, people who mastered this life as humans and ascended into a higher realm. So, there's this whole idea in the New Age that you're constantly ascending into higher realms as different initiations, as different rites, all that kind of stuff. The UFO movement is a big part of the New Age. I personally never had any experiences with that, but I did believe in aliens. I was into the whole David Icke theories of, grays and reptilians and all that stuff, which seemed, feasible because I would look outside and look at the stars and say, this universe is just too big. How could there not be other life? It made logical sense to me, a lot of the stuff. Even though now I see it in totally different eyes, at the time, it really did make sense to me. And I had got so steeped into it for, 13 years that the more I got in it, the more experiences I would have to validate it, and the further and further I would go down that rabbit hole. So I was big into stuff like The Secret. What the bleep do we know? I watched, um, I used things like The Secret philosophy of, the law of attraction to create things in my life, and I really did use it, and it worked for me. I created things that I wanted, like I wanted to have a house on the beach. Um, I wanted to be on air on the radio. These are things that I said I would do, and I would do my affirmations and I would put it out in the universe, and then somehow it would happen. And so I'm thinking like, oh, this stuff really works. But in the end, I lost all those things, and because The Secret leaves out a big part, which is, you know, basically The Secret repackaged what was in the Bible, which is ask and it will be given to you. But you're asking God. You're not saying, "Oh, I'm God. I'm going to create this for myself," because I didn't align those circumstances in the universe to work out for myself. I didn't do that. Of course, you have to take action, but what I'm saying is there's a larger force at play. And basically, all The Secret does is take God out of the equation and call it the universe. But it's basically the same thing, um, repackaged. But yeah, so going back to the entertainment industry and all that stuff, with the music and all that, I was big into rock and roll music. Um, Growing up in the 80s, my parents were young and they listened to all that Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Beatles, all the good stuff. And, I like to be part of that cool crowd. I was like wanting to be out smoking weed, drinking, partying, all that kind of stuff. I was doing all of it. Um, and randomly, so this is basically, years of my life getting deeper and deeper into this stuff. And I eventually started collecting tarot card decks. I had like I would say I had at least 16 different kinds of tarot and angel card decks. Um, like I said, crystals, like rare crystals, moldavite, all these things. And basically, I started one night doing research for this thing that I wanted to write about the television, and how I think it's, really toxic. And, I was always part of the truth movement. So I wanted to talk about how, I don't know, my light keeps going off. Um, how for me personally, one of the biggest things that helped me to wake up really and unplug from the quote matrix of reality is that I stopped watching television. So I wanted to talk about that, and I started researching it, and I was writing about it a little bit. And, through my research, I was looking at different things like how when you watch television, your brain automatically goes into a theta wave state, so that you're automatically it's like a hypnotic state. And so you're automatically more susceptible to, um, messages. And this is, pretty much brainwashing. And it's used obviously a lot in advertising and stuff like that, but it's more than that. It's like it's used to create an idea of reality for the viewer, and the television tells us what the world is. It tells, through the controlled media, that's all lies. Through the television shows that show this image of what family is, or what, society is, or what's right, what's wrong, how you should look, etc. You get the idea. Um, so ever since I stopped watching television back in April of 2012, I mean, I have Netflix on the on the computer, so I'm not going to say I never watched anything ever again, but I pretty much stopped. I don't have cable, and I never really liked watching TV after that point. I got rid of cable, and it would be to the point where I couldn't even go into someone's house where they had television on the background. It started to be like, oh my God, it's so offensive, because I was so um, used to not having it that it became like almost like a violent attack, when you're not used to it. I watched TV my whole life growing up. I used to fall asleep with the television as a kid, but after you get used to it, not in your environment, I'd go to my friends or something and be like on like, da da da, buy this, da da da, so loud. And I would just be like, it's like bombarding with these messages. Um, yeah. And so, I was researching, the history of television and how it's used for propaganda and all that kind of stuff. Um, and the further and further I went along into my research, I started, getting into the entertainment industry, the music industry, all that kind of stuff. And basically, I started to realize that, that whole old adage of like, they sold their soul to the devil, huh, you know, um, that I used to think was basically just meant that people sold out, they became like, sellouts to the industry or whatever. I started to realize that that was actually true, that these people were actually selling their souls to the devil. Um, Now, at the time, you got to realize I've been into this new age movement for 13 years, so I didn't even believe in the devil. I didn't really believe in all that. I believed in good and bad energy and, that kind of thing, but I didn't believe there was like some guy out there, or some entity or whatever, trying to deceive people and ruin their souls. But I kept seeing so many accounts of just so many people in the industry, talk about selling their souls, and I'm like, if these people are saying this, like, why are they saying this if it's not true? Is it just like, you know, is it just a joke? Is it just to trick people? Is it just whatever? Um, I started to realize that, you know, the reason why they're saying that is because it's true. They are selling their souls. Katy Perry said in an interview, like, I wanted to be the Amy Grant of music, but it didn't work out, so I sold my soul to the devil. I saw one of Lady Gaga where she's like, I swear to Lucifer. And, Beyonce talking about getting possessed by her alter ego, Sasha Fierce, and all these things. And it started being shown to me, and I was just like, this is crazy. Um, but I still wasn't really sure what to think. And so I just kept doing my research, and I started reading about like rock history and how so many bands like really sang homages to Satan, and so many artists like even Eminem will have in their lyrics like I sold my soul to the devil, Kanye West, all that stuff. And it's like, I'm a logical person, but I can't see that people would just keep saying that if it wasn't true. Um, so yeah, it really started to make me question things. I was like, this is strange. Is the devil real? Is this real? Like, am I going crazy right now? I don't really know what's happening. So I kept on doing research about that kind of thing. And at some point I stumbled upon well, actually, I should say it popped in my mind to watch this video that my uncle had sent me last summer, which was the summer of 2012. And he knew I was into the new age stuff. But he had been pretty much kind of like a new Christian. He's this like big tatted up guy that used to party and be in the clubs and very aggressive. He's not like a very um, typical person. I shouldn't say typical because anyone can find God, but he's not the image of what you would think. When you think Christian, he's pretty hardcore and intimidating. So when he became Christian, it was like, oh wow, that's interesting and strange. But I always knew he was a truth seeker too, so I thought, well, that's weird. Well, he's got some of it right. Jesus was a teacher and a healer and a master and all that blah 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 junk that I was brainwashed with. But anyway, so he had sent me this video last summer, knowing that I was into the new age. And when I started watching it, at that point, I was like, oh, I'm not watching this crap. Like, I don't want, I don't. believe this because it was basically, speaking against everything I was into. I didn't want to face it. I didn't want to deal with that. But it basically was, put in my mind at this point because I think now that I was ready to accept that there really may be an evil force in the world, to take a look at it. So I watched that video. It's actually a documentary. It's about an hour and a half, maybe, or 2 hours long. I'm not sure, but it's for free on YouTube. And you really should check it out if you're into any of these occult things like mediums, tarot cards, psychics, horoscopes, all this stuff, all this stuff. All this stuff is not of God. It's just not of God. And I didn't know that. I didn't understand that. I really thought that I was seeking answers from the truth. And God says, in the Bible, why would you seek the dead on behalf of the living? Why would you not seek your God? Why would you seek signs in the stars when God created the stars? We're supposed to only have Him as God, and that's it. I didn't understand that. Um, so anyway, I watched the movie, and basically what it did was show me these connections between the New Age movement, which, had its roots back in the late 1800s with authors like Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Aleister Crowley. He was a self-proclaimed Satanist, aka the Beast. He called himself 666. Um, these authors wrote a lot about, this type of thing, energy, um, thoughts, creating reality, all that kind of new age stuff. That's kind of where, you know, it, it started, but this, I shouldn't say it started there. This is when it started to really, like, spread more and more. Um, but of course, it started with Satan in the Garden of Eden with the very first lie when he said, eat the fruit and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. So he told Adam and Eve the very first lie was that they will be like gods, and that's pretty much what the whole New Age movement believes, is that we're all on our way to godhood. So they're believing the very first lie. Um, but anyway, basically what the movie showed me was that these people in particular, who were very foundational in the start of the current New Age movement, had a lot of ties to Freemasonry. Um, and if you don't know what that is, you can look it up. I mean, there's just so much to cover, and that's why my first testimony was so long, but I'm trying to make this shorter. So, um, basically, Freemasons at the high levels, not all levels, but the very high levels are, Satanist. And it showed clear links between these people and, satanic rituals and Freemasonry, and even in their own text. They talked about Lucifer being the light bearer and the one that basically they think Lucifer was the one who made a sacrifice to humans by giving them the knowledge, and that he is the real God. He's the real angel of humanity, and that's who they worship. They worship Lucifer. Now, this isn't something I'm making up, like, someone said to me, oh, yeah, you and your conspiracies. This isn't a conspiracy. You can read it. It's in The Secret Doctrine that was written by Helena Blavatsky. She wrote Lucifer means light. The word lucis, the root of it does mean to bear light. And that's why they think he is the light bringer. So in a lot of these texts by Alice Bailey, they would talk about the new coming age and how, we would all need to come together with new plans for a new world to deal with all these global crises. And all of this is said and talked about under the name of, excuse me, under the guise of peace and love and light. And we're going to usher in a new era of consciousness. And it's going to be, we're going to ascend. Everything's going to be butterflies and rainbows. Everything's going to be great. Um, the only thing is that we all have to get behind this thought, this philosophy. And they talked about the Christ coming. So it's funny that I see that a lot of New Agers don't believe in good and evil and don't believe in Christ or Satan or whatever, but the founders of their philosophy did believe in these things. They wrote about them extensively. They wrote about Satan. They wrote about Christ. But their Christ is not the Jesus Christ of the Bible. Their Christ is the Antichrist. And basically, the whole New Age movement and religion and philosophy is basically the religion of the New World Order. And that's what was shown to me in that movie. And that's what was made clear to me when I really started researching everything. And I mean, my my mind was just overwhelmed, my mind was blown. I was shocked. I was horrified because I was so into this stuff. Like, I literally was out there every day hugging trees, doing hot yoga, um, just preaching this whole like thoughts create reality paradigm, writing articles about it. People would come to me and say like, "Oh, you're so spiritually alive," and ask me questions about things, and I really thought that I was on to the truth. I really thought that I was spiritually evolving. I really thought that I was getting closer to God. I really did. So and I rejected Christianity. I rejected it in my early 20s as, brainwashing. I didn't want anything to do with the Catholic Church. I thought it was ridiculous. So I was shocked when I saw all this. And you know, some scriptures just started being revealed to me. Um, that these things that I was into was an abomination to the Lord. I didn't understand why until after, but it was basically because, the power that you get when you do these things, these new age practices, even though they do work a lot of times, it works because the devil can give you power too. The devil can give you experiences. He can give you truths. But it's always like mixed with a little bit of truth and then falsity, So that's how they trick you. They get you hooked. They tell you a little bit of truth and then the lie, and that's what makes you accept the lie more. Um, yeah, and so if you watch things like Zeitgeist, this was a big thing for me that kind of destroyed the image of Christ for me. This whole idea that Christ is just a repackaged story from many other ascended masters. Um, that claim has been debunked by even historians, even atheists, even secular historians agree that the claims they make in that is just ridiculous. But they put a lot of other stuff in there for the truth movement, like the 9/11 stuff, or like the Federal Reserve. All that stuff, a lot of that is true. So you watch it and you're like, oh yeah, that's true. But in reality, they're giving you half truth to to distract you. And their ultimate goal, if you watch Zeitgeist Addendum, is to have this new system where, we don't have money because, of course, the bankers and all these people are evil, which they are. So their solution is, we're going to have basically a resource-based economy and all this stuff. But if you really look closely at the core of this stuff, now, mind you, I grew up as a bleeding heart liberal, so things change when you really see the truth. And that's a whole nother topic, but I'll just leave it at that. Basically, when you get to the core of the Zeitgeist Addendum and you realize the solutions for all the problems that they show you, it's basically communism. That's what it is. And if you look at the New World Order and the writings of all these new, early New Agers and even politicians, that have had these social engineering plans for years and years, that's their ultimate goal. The ultimate goal of all this is to get everybody behind one world system, to get everybody into one world religion, one world government, and that's called the New World Order. It's written on the back of the dollar bill. Um, George Bush Sr. has talked about it in video clips. Ronald Reagan. All of this stuff has been clearly out there for people to see if you want to find it. But basically, I didn't realize that, the New Age movement was the new world religion for that New World Order system. I thought that we were going to be creating a shift and, that, we didn't have to buy into the fears of the New World Order. We can create our own reality and we can change all that. And the truth is that, no, we can't. Um, I'm not saying that it's hopeless because I don't know what the future holds, but basically scriptures were being revealed to me left and right about the end times and how, at the end of days you're going to need the mark of the beast quote to buy and sell and all that stuff, and pretty much that's what they're trying to do with the New World Order. You're going to have some kind of identification tool. Some say it's the RFID chip in order to engage in this system. So, all this stuff has been written about, all this stuff has been prophesied, all this stuff is actually in the Bible. And before, when I would read it, I would be like, oh, obedient to God, or, oh, that's just ridiculous. I didn't see the truth in it. But when you actually start to open your heart, what I did when I was confused and I started to think, wow, is everything in my life that I've been into for the past 13 years a lie? Is it really like, is the roots of it really evil and satanic? You know, I didn't know what to believe. I wasn't like, oh yeah, Jesus is the truth then. I wasn't sure, I was very shocked. I was overwhelmed. I was just a mess. I literally didn't even know what to think about life anymore. Um, all my delusions were kind of destroyed, and I kind of started to see all the flaws in the New Age and all the fallacies, but I wasn't really sold on Jesus yet. So basically, what I did was just pray that God would reveal the truth to me, and I would pray for that, and that's what happened. So after that, God really does work in your heart and your mind and change the way you see things, because I see things now so differently than I did before, and I can't explain it to any other reason except for the fact that God is working in my heart, because I never saw life this way at all. Things that I used to do and say even are just, they're hurtful to me now, because I realize that the reason why God has these rules for us is that He's so holy. He created everything. He wants us to abide by certain things because we're His children. And when we do the things that are against Him, it opens up bad things in our lives. It's not because He's trying to take away fun or things like that. It's just that the things that we chase in life that we do because we think, well, we can do whatever we want. This is a free country. I'll drink all day if I want. I'll smoke weed. I'll do this. I'll do that. We're only hurting ourselves in the end, because I've done it all. I've done it all, and it doesn't lead to happiness. There's always a void. There's always an emptiness when you don't have God in your life. And I was always seeking the truth and seeking God in my own way, but I was deceived. I was so deceived because the lies are so intriguing, and they're so glittery and promising. You want to believe them. And I actually found this one scripture that it says, "For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but wanting to have their ears tickled, they will accumulate for themselves teachers in accordance to their own desires, and will turn away their ears from the truth, and will turn aside to myths." And that really spoke to me, because it was like, yeah, that's what we do now. We just kind of pick and choose a la carte from every religion what we choose to believe in, what we desire, and try to make God into what we want Him to be. But God is who He is, and He told us who He is in His Word. And, I didn't understand that either, because I thought Christianity was just a tool of social control. And, I look at things like the Crusades and look at a lot of Christians that give Christ a bad name and be like, this is all just bull. Um, but what I realized was that, you know, when Jesus came, He came to show us the truth, that we were living in sin, and that, He brought people out of demonic deception. He most of the Gospels, a lot of the New Testament is about Christ getting rid of demons. And that's the thing that people don't understand, is that around us all the time there is spiritual warfare. There is a battle of good and evil. There really is. And there are demons out there trying to deceive you, and there are forces out there that are trying to win your soul. This is not a joke. You know, um it's real. It's so real. And I was deceived, and I was letting these things into my life, because every time I opened a tarot card, every time you know, I did these new age practices, I was saying, "Yes, Satan, come in." I didn't know that's what I was saying, but I wasn't going to God. And anything that He told us in His Word, anything that isn't of that, um, is not of Him. And what happened when Christ came and He died for our sins, people just, before He was crucified, people just followed Him. They followed Him everywhere, because He was healing people left and right. He was raising people from the dead. And people couldn't, they were so amazed at this person that, like, crowds would just gather. And, it spread so rapidly, because the truth was there. I mean, these people, a lot of them were eyewitnesses to what He did, a lot of them that wrote the Bible. And, people say, like, oh, over the years it's been changed and translated and all that. No, That's not true. These are lies and lies upon lies, to take you away from God. And I believed them. I believe them all. There's no argument you can throw at me, um, to discredit the Bible that I haven't once told another Christian to discredit them. I know the lies. I believed them myself, but they're just not true. And what happened is, when after they crucified him, they wanted Christianity to kind of die out a little bit, and they tried to quell it, but they couldn't. It just kept spreading like wildfire because people knew it was true. People had seen it for themselves, and the Romans, they had no other choice but to just basically adopt Christianity because that was the only way that they could actually control people, because they knew they couldn't get rid of it. And so, they adopted it, and they may have corrupted it for their own purposes, just like many men use many things and twist it for their own needs. Um, Even today, Christians do that. But Christians aren't perfect. We're all sinners. You know what I mean? We're just people, but we're saved by the grace of God because we believe that He came and died for us to pay the price for our sins. And you know, after that happened, the Romans executed him and all that, and the Catholic Church, became what it was. Eventually, that was infiltrated too. Um, and that's why today the Catholic Church is actually, I know a lot of good Catholics. I was raised Catholic, and I know some really good people that follow the Catholic faith and they mean well, and I'm not saying they're evil at all. Just like a lot of the New Agers are not evil. I mean, some of these people are very sincere, kind, humanitarian hearted people who genuinely want a better life for the world and want to take care of the planet and want to help animals and all these great things. They're kind hearted. They really do want the best. They're not evil. They're not like satanic in that sense where they like, I'm gonna follow Satan like a real Satanist. Um, they're just deceived. They're just deceived like I was. I always wanted to help. I always wanted to make the world a better place, and I was deceived. Um, yeah, but you know, basically the high levels of the Catholic Church at the Vatican are satanic. They've been infiltrated by Satanism. A lot of the things they do, they worship idols. They do all these things that are not biblical. And, that's why you hear about all these Catholic priests and raping little boys and all this pedophilia and stuff, because it's satanic rituals. You know, I know it sounds crazy, but you look in the headlines and, just Google Catholic priest molestation, and I'm sure thousands and thousands of articles will come up because it's really happening. This stuff is real, it's happening, and they've been infiltrated. So, yeah, you can't look at Catholic priest or the Crusades or things that certain people have done and say, oh, well, that was created to control, it's all this and that. People have, stained the name of Christianity. But Christ didn't do that. Christ came and he spoke the truth and he spoke the word of God. And, you know, he knew this would happen. He knew there would be false Christ. This was all written about. But anyway, I think this video is getting pretty long now, and this was supposed to be my short version, which it actually is a lot shorter than the other one. So I'm going to stop it there. But basically, yeah, Jesus Christ pulled me out of the New Age deception. And the funny thing is that when this happened, I was so bewildered and just shocked, and like I didn't know what to do. Um, I called my friend Amy, who happened to be a Christian, and I told her I was having these revelations and how, all these Bible verses were speaking to me about the end of the world and the New World Order and, against all the New Age stuff that I was into, and how I thought I was deceived. And she said, Tanya, I've been praying for you for like a year. um, two of her Bible studies that at different churches she goes to, all these people were praying for me. And I just started crying. I was like, wow, God answers prayers, and by the grace of God, he saved me. He pulled me out of that deception. And I'm still new to all this. I don't have all the answers, but the more I learn, it just keeps speaking to me more and more. I mean, there's so much truth that was written thousands of years ago that is still relevant today, and it was preserved. He preserved that word throughout the ages for us to know the truth. And I've watched a lot of accounts of former Satanists that were like legitimately in the Church of Satan, high priest and all that, who, ended up being attacked by demons, or, they would use witchcraft and do all these spells on people, and then, he had spirits come back and be like, don't you dare send me to Christians, because actually, this is something important I left out, and I'll mention it really quickly. Whenever you're into these occult practices, you open the door for demonic attack. Now, at the time, they were angels, and they were spirit guides, and they were very nice beings, and it was crazy because once I got rid of all my new age material when I realized it was all lies. I threw away all these occult things, and it said in the Bible, and no marvel, because even Satan himself comes disguised as an angel of light. And I didn't know that. So all this time I had been deceived by these beings who were actually demons. Because your dead relatives aren't around trying to contact you. There's, a whole demonic realm trying to impersonate your familiar relatives. That's why the Bible says don't contact familiar spirits, because, it's not what you think it is. It's of the devil. But anyway, I got rid of all of that stuff. I threw away bags of tarot cards and crystals and, yeah, New Age books of every kind, movies, just everything, you name it. I threw it away. And right after that, I started getting seriously demonically attacked in my house. Um, just crazy things. I would have sleep paralysis. I was having nightmares where I was getting strangled and bloodied and hanging from, it was just crazy. Like dreams of like being burned, Christians being burned in churches, and all this stuff was happening. And I thought, like, I never had nightmares like this before. This is so crazy. And when I had the sleep paralysis and all that, I woke up, and a few times this happened, and one of the times, like, things was falling over in our house and everything, and even my boyfriend woke up startled, like, what was that? And I'm like, oh, you heard that? Because I had just woke up from the nightmare, and I wasn't sure if I had heard that or not, if it was real or not. And we kind of felt the presence in the house, and we knew something wasn't right. And I was like, you feel that? And he's like, yeah. And he's not a person to be like, yeah, I feel spirits. He used to always think my new age stuff was like crazy and all that. He wasn't really into that stuff. Um, but he was like, yeah, I definitely feel something. And so he got up and grabbed his Bible, and he said, in the name of Jesus Christ, we rebuke you and we send you away. And they left. They literally, they just left. We felt them leave the house. And before he said that, I had woke up from this crazy nightmare, and I was like really kind of scared, and I just felt this like ominous presence over me of like, I don't know how to describe it, just a definite presence of fear, kind of holding me hostage, like the sleep paralysis. And once he said that, it was like they were gone. I just got right out of bed, went around my house. I wasn't scared at all because I knew they weren't there anymore. I could tell they weren't there anymore. I could feel it. And I think what happened was when I got rid of all my stuff, Satan didn't like it very much because he knew obviously I was seeing through these deceptions, and he was trying to attack me and trying to scare me by all these supernatural things that were happening. And we rebuked him in Jesus' name, and he left. And so instead of scaring me, all he did was just reinforce the fact that Jesus Christ is the Lord. He is the one. He is the truth. He is the way, the truth, and the life. All this stuff is true. People try to come at me and say, what about this branch of Christianity? What about that one? All this was created to... No. No. People can distort things the way they want, but nothing will ever change the fact who Christ was, why he came here, and that he is God. and that's my testimony. I hope that it was helpful to you in some way. If you have any questions, please feel free to message me, leave a comment. If you want to be a troll and leave some negative comment, I'm not going to deal with that anymore. If you sincerely have questions, I will love to discuss them, but I'm here to speak the truth, not debate people that want to try to discredit the truth. So ain't nobody got time for that. I'm not gonna do that anymore. I spent a lot of time in my life um, trying to argue people into the truth, and that's just not the way. So um, I send you sincere prayers that if you are into the New Age movement, that you will see through the deceptions and stop the practices, because they are very dangerous. And may you have a blessed day. Bye.